Hey everyone, the name is Erik, and I think that everyone is a little too sure of themselves and who they are. Everyone tends to be a little limited in defining themselves, and we tend to confine rather than define ourselves by often over-identifying with one part of ourselves but forgetting the others. Now, I tend to advise everyone to look bigger. You're more than what you think you are, and I think we are all fed the misconceptions about ourselves, and these are reinforced by often the so-called Jungian functional hierarchy. Yeah, here you get one core function that is said to be you, and then you get other parts of yourself that are said to be not you or only a little you. And there we get to a little of a dilemma or a conundrum, and that is the over-identification with ego or with the dominant. And here I think what I've learned is the issue is the ego tends to be way too sure of itself, and it tends to repress parts of itself, the parts that contradict each other. And I think a convenient way to think about this is sometimes people think the world is a certain way, and that stops them from being their best version of themselves. They hold on to limiting beliefs about themselves that keep them from acting in their own best interests. I think this is the best seen in Enneagram 6, as they tend to over-identify with their own thoughts and what's in their head. They think the world is a certain way, often a bad way, and that often keeps them from acting towards their dreams or towards their best interests. I think often the pessimism or the fear can kind of paralyze them from action and from conscious action, in the sense that they start acting more on their unconscious beliefs and on their worries than on what they ideally want. And there's where the issue tends to come. If you look at it from the perspective of the Enneagram tree, acting consciously, but they are letting go of and ignoring the thinking side of their brain, the part that says, but didn't you want to be a writer? Aren't you a person that like this? Or shouldn't you be doing that? The shoulds, the thoughts, everything that tells you about who you are and what your history is and where you're, what you're meant to be and what you can be. That's forgotten in the favor of what you can do. What am I capable of? What is possible? The tree over-identifies with their abilities and what they can, and they forget the question of should. And this is how the brain tends to function. A lot of the time you can see that the brain tends to kind of repress or avoid certain parts of itself. It's like we are kind of keening in on one part of ourselves, and we think this is all that I am, and that leads to a sense of emptiness and unfulfillment. Emptiness and unfulfillment is clearly shown in a lot of Enneagram types. Like a lot of the people that work purely to be successful and to be popular and to be good at something find themselves feeling often unsure of themselves. Who am I really? What am I behind all of this? Sure, I've done a lot of great things, but who am I? Like, what is me? If I've done all these things, what is really the true part of myself? That question of really uncertainty and frustration of not knowing yourself and of wanting to know yourself and feeling lost from yourself. That's so common in Enneagram 3 types. Just as the shame in the Enneagram 6 of not acting on what they should have done, not doing what they should have done, not being who they should have been, not standing up when they should have stood up for something. That can be such a thing, such a burning thing, because we want to act in our best interest. We want to be true to ourselves, but we are inclined not to be. For some reason, we are inclined not to be. And the Enneagram is kind of like a coping mechanism. It's a description of how we act when we are not acting towards our core values. How we act when we confuse our core values with our secondary values. Perhaps we might come to believe popularity is more important than our ambition. It's more important to be popular for what you do than to do what you want to do. And that's a core fallacy of the brain. There are so many fallacies, lazy thinking, things that we do that really keep us from acting and expressing our core values and who we really are. And when I find myself looking at the MBTI in contrast with the Enneagram, the MBTI is to me who we ideally are at our best. where the Enneagram is who we are when we are stressed or anxious or not really ourselves, when we're putting on a mask. We act out of habit, we act usual ways. When I designed a new Enneagram test, I said I tend to a lot, and I think I tend to is a core representation of the Enneagram. The Enneagram is so much about what we usually do, what we tend to do, what we usually do in various situations without thinking, without realizing it. Often we just do it and we don't realize we're doing it, and we find ourselves doing it a lot and we don't really know why we're doing it. Just purely habit. Habits that often result in our upbringing. Of course, this is how we were taught to be. Our parents told us to be like this, or they forced us to be like this because we had to be like this to cope with our environment and our upbringing. And so the Enneagram is about how we tend to act, and MBTI is about how we ideally should act. What's the big five? What's the point of the big five? Well, the big five is kind of similar to the Enneagram, really. The big five is kind of what we do. If you look at purely the behavioralistic part of ourselves, oh, I'm outgoing, oh, I'm open-minded, oh, I'm agreeable, oh, I'm disagreeable, I'm conscientious, or I'm not conscientious. The big five doesn't really go into why, because it can't measure why. It can only measure what you do. You do this and you don't do that, so you are this. You have this big five profile. The Enneagram is why you do it. Why are you outgoing? Why are you open? Why are you conscientious? What drives your conscientiousness? So it's about the reasoning, the mental thoughts, the expressions, the thoughts, the experiences that you have that make you do various things. So none is more important than the other. None is more effective. Really, the Enneagram is qualitative, focused on the why. Then the big five is focused on the what. And in themselves, I think both should be connected, dots should be drawn, and we should be saying this is how the big five, well, this is the Enneagram profile that produces the certain big five profile. This Enneagram profile produces that big five profile. This big five profile is common in people that think like this, and that can help you identify your beliefs, and it can help you identify your thoughts. And really often, what people keep on saying, people who work with the big five, such as Jordan B. Peterson, is it's all about the script. Change your script. If you don't like who you are, change your script. If you do something you don't like, stop doing it. Find a way, a script, a story to tell yourself, a thought pattern that can help reinforce good behavior in the direction that you want to go. Okay, I want to become more outgoing. What kind of thoughts do I need to think to be more outgoing? How do I need to see myself to be more outgoing? How do I need to change my view on the world to be more outgoing? Perhaps I need to become more positive towards others. Perhaps I need to be more open that people can be good, not just bad. Perhaps I need to be more confident in myself. Perhaps I need to believe more in myself. All of this has to do with why do I not do what I do? And the scripting is something a lot of organizations talk about. Personality Hacker also talks a lot about scripts, life scripts, why we do what we do. And scripts are kind of like how you execute and how you reach and how you work towards your core values. Say you're an INFJ. Your core values are first, privacy, second, vision, third, kindness, fourth, it is harmony. So knowing all of these four values, you know kind of what you want. Okay, I want to work towards a long-term vision. I want to have a long-term vision. I want to execute this vision. I want to envision something, and then I want to act towards it. And I want to reach this destination. I want to have harmony while I work towards this. This is often a difficult thing to achieve because often your vision tends to create disharmony and conflict and discord. So how do I balance the two? Also, they have the kindness part of yourself and you have the private part of yourself. You want to be kind and good to others, but you also want to take time to yourself. How do you balance these things? Because often the pursuit of privacy can be perceived as unkind. It can be perceived as if you're hurting other people, or if you don't like people, or if you're letting people down, or going your own path and ignoring what other people need. And that's the conflict that you need to find balance in. You need to find a way to be kind while remaining true to your need to privacy. And that's the INFJ conundrum. Now, the Enneagram is how you execute that. So you're looking at Enneagram 1, Enneagram 2, Enneagram 3. all of these different Enneagrams, you're looking at different drives. Enneagram 1 has the drive of perfectionism, Enneagram 2 has to be good, Enneagram 3 has to be popular, Enneagram 4 has to be unique, and so on and so on. So this is a script, this is a thought pattern. Enneagram 4, feel misunderstood. How can I become more misunderstood? How does feeling misunderstood impact on INFJ? Well, perhaps INFJs don't feel like when they're often easily misunderstood. They're trying to do something kind, but people don't understand. They're trying to take time to themselves, but other people feel hurt or betrayed. And so the INFJ 4 feels like, people don't understand me. I'm just trying to be myself, and people don't understand that I'm just trying to be kind to others. People don't understand that I'm just trying to take time to myself. And there's a frustration there, and there's kind of a thought pattern like the thought pattern of the outcast or the misfit or the rebel. And here you see kind of how the Enneagram starts to intersect with type. This is why I don't talk about subtypes anymore. I talk about INFJ 1s, I talk about INFJ 2s, 3s, and 4s, and so on. Because I believe these are the subtypes. These are what make and influence how we express our cognitive functions. Well, obviously an INFJ 4 will be a lot more careful with how they express kindness. They can't let themselves express kindness for the most part because they don't want to feel misunderstood. They have tried to do the right thing to others, but other people have just gotten upset. And that's why they stop kind of expressing that sense of kindness. They still try to remain true to themselves, and they still try to move forward, and they still try to move forward, but they do it by taking more time to themselves, more to privacy, more towards themselves, more towards going away from others. Okay, if other people don't like my kindness, I guess I'll just focus on myself and who I am. And that drives more towards self-obsession. And it can help fulfill and give you privacy for the most part, but it can also keep you from expressing other core parts of yourself. Looking at the INFJ 3, the INFJ 3 is a very, very kind person. The INFJ 3 tries to prove themselves to others to be liked by doing constantly things for other people. Oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm helping that person and that person and that person, and I'm successful in this area, and I've done this work for this group, for Amnesty, for UNHCR. I've done a lot of good things for everyone. And then there's this vanity in all of this, because often this comes at the expense of privacy. INFJ 3s don't take time for themselves. They're constantly thinking they have to do things. If I'm not doing things, I'm not being kind. And so every time I take time to myself, I'm being hurtful to other people. So I need to keep doing things. And I need to keep rushing myself and pressuring myself to do more. And then you have, for example, the INFJ 5 and the INFJ 6. The INFJ 6 is a deeply private individual. The INFJ 6 doesn't allow themselves to be kind because they felt betrayed so many times. Other people have just betrayed them. They've done the right thing, but other people haven't accepted it and haven't helped them back in return. And there's this like, oh, yeah, it doesn't feel good. And all in all, this is just storytelling. Stories you tell yourself. Things you tell yourself that can be true or can be false. Sometimes are true, sometimes are false. Often we are inclined to believe that the way we see the world is the right way. We believe our thoughts are true, the way we see things are correct, no matter what we see things as. But of course there is a limit here. Things are not always the way we think they are. Things are not always, this is not going to go the way we think. And we think in fallacies, we think lazily, we shape our reality, we ignore evidence that counts to puts our life differently. So it's all about kind of recognizing fallacies in how we think and noticing that I think I'm not loved by other people. But what about that time when that person did that? And what about that time when that person did that? Just recognizing that, oh, there's a bigger picture outside of what I think. There is something more than what I thought was the case. And so this is what we're all searching for. That space where we start to recognize these connections and where we start looking at things bigger from more perspectives. And that's where growth lies.